Well, UCLA's got their string of big games coming up, but let's talk to you about why this game against Utah is the most important game for UCLA in 8 years. I said it, the most important game for UCLA's football program in 8 years coming up at home against the Rose Bowl. Let's detail the implications and why it's been so long. Since it's been an important game for UCLA football. Let's hit that music, baby.
You are Locked On UCLA, your daily podcast on the UCLA Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey everybody, it's your favorite host, Zach Anderson-Yoxsimer at ZachAndYox on Twitter. You can follow the show at Locked On Bruins. It's Locked On UCLA, though, as we welcome you into the show. Thanks for making Locked On UCLA your first listen each and every day. This show is brought to you by SimpliSafe. SimpliSafe, well, they've got awesome new technology, such as 24/7 monitoring agents with the Fast Protect technology that can help capture evidence to accurately verify a threat for faster police response. No safe like SimpliSafe. Just visit simplisafe.com/lockedoncollege for more. We'll hear about more from SimpliSafe later. But Bruins fans, you know what time it is. 8 clap time. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. UCLA. UCLA. Fight, fight, fight. Let's go. Get excited. Let's go. So you can find the podcast, whether it be on Spotify, Odyssey, Apple Podcasts for free. You can go like, comment, subscribe on YouTube. In the meantime, thanks for all the supports. Let's get to it here for Locked On UCLA. So as I tease in the open, this is UCLA's biggest game coming up this week. Even though they beat a number 15th ranked team at the time in Washington in their most recent game, 40-32, to help vault the Bruins into the rankings for the first time, it seems like forever, for UCLA. It doesn't seem like they've gotten lots of national media attention from all these years, from the end of Jim Moore through Chip Kelly. It's been a slow build forward for UCLA, which is why this game against Utah is so important. UCLA comes in as the 18th ranked team in the AP poll, 19th in the USA Today coaches poll. Utah comes in as the second highest ranked Pac-12 team, unbeaten in Pac-12 play, just like UCLA. One of 4 unbeatens in Pac-12 play: UCLA, Oregon, USC, and Utah. And those are all teams UCLA is going to have to play, with Washington kind of creeping from below at the moment. Utah, 4-1, only lost that week 1 season opening loss in a true road game at Florida, where they had a chance to tie it late, had a chance to win it late, and they threw the pick in the red zone, in the end zone, to lose the game. This game is so important for UCLA because not only one, you beat Utah, you get the tiebreaker, you get a nice 2 wins out of their brutal 3-game stretch in the middle of the season, where potentially at the time of their games, all 3 teams will be ranked in the number 15 or higher, considering Oregon's ranked number 12 at the moment, right behind Utah, and could even get higher if they win before they head into their bye. But for UCLA, this one is so crucial for them going forward. You get a home game against Utah, that's something you got to take care of with a road matchup at Oregon, in Autzen, in Eugene, with so much riding on the line. You'd like to take care of the home game. And you can argue it's not only the biggest home game in years, it's the biggest game for UCLA in years. I know, and it's been a couple years, a little more than a couple, since the Bruins were ranked in the top 10, got some love. But UCLA, this is going to mean so much going forward. This game should bring all the fans, should bring all the support. This is the one game where everybody should say, all right, even though it's a 12:30 start, that's still a very solid slot college football wise. You get in the middle, right in the prime, the prime viewing part of the West Coast, a good spot watching in the end of the afternoon, early evening for the East Coast. You got a lot of eyes on this UCLA Utah game in the Rose Bowl. This is one where the fans should pack it out. UCLA fans, Bruins need your support. It shouldn't be tarped off this weekend. I don't know if it actually will be, but we should pack up the Rose Bowl, get excited for the biggest game in 8 years. UCLA 18, Utah 11. Both teams ranked. You could argue that Utah is practically a top 10 team, on the verge of being a top 10 team. UCLA wins this game, they probably might be close to being a top 10 team. That's how important it is before they go play Oregon later in 2 weeks, and then SC later in the season. If you want to make it to a Pac-12 title game, got to get through all the dogs UCLA is going to play. And they're playing every single team that is in direct competition, standing in UCLA's way in this divisionless Pac-12 title game where head-to-head tiebreakers are extremely, extremely crucial. Utah this season still has to go play Oregon and SC, including Washington State. So you beat them, you can kind of knock them down a peg and get a one-up. Important, right? Another thing is you can prove your physicality. You can prove UCLA football is going to belong this season. All the seniors, Dorian Thompson-Robinson, the most outspoken, especially after that Washington one, talk about his receipts, about all the doubters and everything. The goals before the season was to the Rose Bowl. And you can even dream even bigger. If UCLA keeps playing well and building forward, there can be something even more special, whether it could be better than a Rose Bowl. And the only thing better is making a dream run to the college football playoff and seeing how they draw there. But for UCLA to get to where they need to get to, it all starts with winning through the Pac 12 and earning a spot in the Pac 12 title game. After that, then you got to play your way in. Starts with Utah, a big game where UCLA hasn't had so many implications riding on a game since an October game in 2014. I'm going to get to that in just a moment. We'll get to you about what that game was, who that was, and what the implications were riding on that game 8 years ago. But we'll get to it after I tell you a little bit more about SimpliSafe. For SimpliSafe, we'll get to it in just a moment if it wants to load. Oh, goodness. Don't you love just technology sometimes? Don't you just love it when it doesn't want to work? All right, here we go. We should be good to go. All right. The numbers don't lie. In the last decade, over 4 million people have chosen SimpliSafe Home Security to protect their home. You don't earn the trust of that many people without doing something right. SimpliSafe, your safety is the only thing that matters. They protect you with cutting-edge security technology powered by 24/7 professional monitoring agents who always have your back. The reasons to love it are, with those 24/7 agents, they can call you the moment a threat is detected, dispatch police or first responders, even if you're not home or cannot be reached. They blanket your home in protection, and with their advanced sensors in every room, they can instantly detect fires, floods, and other threats to your home. Customize the perfect system for your home in just a few minutes at simplisafe.com/lockedoncollege. Save 20% on your SimpliSafe security system when you sign up for an interactive monitoring plan and get your first month free. Visit simplisafe.com/lockedoncollege to learn more. There's no safe like SimpliSafe. And there's no game as safe, as important, whatever it may be, as UCLA's game against Utah this week. You go back 8 years ago to what I'm referring to, if Bruin fans already think you know what I'm talking about. It's that Utah-Oregon stretch back in 2014 when UCLA was ranked as high as number 8 in the country. Utah came into town, and this isn't the game I'm talking about, but Utah upset them with a missed field goal at the end for UCLA, 30-28. Otherwise, they would have been close to a top 5 team. When the next week, on October 11th of 2014, they played a, hear me out, folks, 12:30 game in the Rose Bowl against Oregon, who was ranked at that time number 12. Ironically, that's what they're ranked right now. Oregon was number 12. UCLA, what were they ranked? Number 18 in the country. In those years, in 15 through 2021, UCLA hasn't had a truly marquee game. You could argue every battle with SC, yeah, that's fine. Even the start to Josh Rosen's career with Jim Moore, that 3-0 start, that was nice. But they blew it against Arizona State at home. Wasn't a marquee game. You can argue that one year where they're throwing for 50 billion yards with the comeback with Texas A&M, but then they went to go lose in Memphis in a high-scoring thriller early in the season. Now in Tennessee, there hasn't been a game with so much riding on the line for UCLA. And while this game for UCLA and Utah could be even more important, or UCLA's next game against Oregon could even jump it in terms of importance, still, the Bruins haven't had a game when they played the Marcus Mariota-led Ducks in 14 at home. The Ducks, who were then coming off a shocking upset loss against Arizona, so that's why they're knocked down to 12. UCLA coming off their own heartbreaking home loss against Utah, which is ironic how in 2014 their season was decided by a Utah-Oregon back-to-back matchups. What is it this year? Utah-Oregon back-to-back matchups with a bye in between, though, which is key. It's very helpful. Very helpful. But for UCLA, they played with Brett Hundley, obviously, the Jim Moore-led team. And for the Bruins, they fell short 42-30. Oregon came in and, for the most part, dominated despite some late UCLA points on a middle-of-the-day game where if there weren't upsets the week before, I'm still bitter about it, it wouldn't have been a 12:30 game. UCLA now jumping into the limelight, earning that 12:30 spot, which isn't the worst spot in college football. We've seen UCLA get much worse times, which is 11 a.m. or earlier on Pac-12 Network. No, this is nationally televised against a Utah team who has already come in with the preseason hype of being a top 10 team. Got dropped early. This is a team who's trying to build. What was so important about that 2014 season? Well, UCLA took they took that second loss early. And if you remember, UCLA started to go on a run at the end of the year, beating Cal, Colorado, Arizona, who actually upset Oregon. They beat USC by 18 points and came into a game against Stanford where all they had to do was win and they'd be in the Pac-12 title game. And they fell just a bit short in a heartbreaking finish at home in a short week. We all know about it. It's sad, whatever. We don't need to talk about it. But when UCLA, if they can pick off one of these games, Utah, Oregon, it can not only set yourself up for the tiebreakers, it can kind of set yourself up for a mulligan. You don't want to really talk that way negatively going forward, but the more ranked opponents you beat, the better it's going to just simple math, whatever it may be. UCLA has not played an important game with this magnitude since that time because that Oregon team went to the national championship and ended up losing in the college football playoff. That was the first edition of the college football playoff with the 4 teams, which were soon going to get expanded. And how many teams, whatever year it is, I don't even know at this point. But for UCLA, you saw Oregon use that game and went on a run. UCLA went on a run after that game, too. They learned a lot about their team, but then it was one loss that knocked them out of contention, and they had to settle for the Valero Alamo Bowl. You beat Utah, and all of a sudden, you're 6-0. You're halfway through your season. You reach the bye. You get a little more healthy, or try to. You can work on things. And then the big matchup against Oregon, which could also be a top 15, top 10 matchup. But UCLA, they have not had this big of a game in 8 years with implications for both teams on the line. Utah can still very well run the table and be a very, very important team to what's going to be decided in not only the Pac-12 conference's hopes, but who can make the college football playoff with still so many things on the line for UCLA and company. It's a big game, and the Bruins have to show out. I'll tell you which teams that the unbeaten Pac-12 teams all have to play left, which is going to add on to why UCLA really needs this game. Maybe they're not favored. They're starting as home underdogs again, just like they were against Washington, which can add more fuel to the fire for DTR if he's able to put in another good performance, right? But UCLA, it's even more because you can look at the schedules going forward and point to why this game is very, very important. They haven't played an important game in 8 years, and there's been more important games in UCLA football lore. But for recent history, in Chip Kelly's history, this is the game that matters. And then we break, and then they go back to Eugene, which all the nostalgia and everything will be still just as important. But the focus at hand, the start of the big games started last week with Washington, and now it starts with the game against Utah being the biggest game, arguably, in Chip Kelly's career. And even regardless of what the Oregon game is, it could be the one that either keeps the season going or spins it backwards, and we'll see what happens. In the meantime, let's talk to you about Built Bar. If you haven't tried the new Built Bar Puffs yet, you're depriving yourselves of one of life's greatest joys. It's the cookie dough chunk puff. They're chewy text. They have a chewy texture, light and chewy texture, real cookie dough chunks, and covered in 100% chocolate. It's all the joys of eating cookie dough without the hassles of making it. Plus, it is healthy for you. Run to built.com to snag a box for you and the family. It's a perfect treat. Just make sure to hide them in the corner and eat them and hoard them for yourself. Just know that you can eat something that tastes good and is good for you. It's that simple. You're going to love the new cookie dough chunk puff, whether you need a snack for your workout, a late night treat, or just need to grab a quick bite. Built is the perfect protein bar, and they taste better than a candy bar. Ditch the calories, fat, and sugar. Just grab yourself a Built bar. Go to built.com, use the promo code LOCKEDON15 and get 15% off your order. Again, use the promo code LOCKEDON15 with the number 15 to get 15% off your order. All right, as we wrap up today's episode of Locked On UCLA, we'll get things building towards the rest of the week where we'll start more Utah previews. We'll actually have our Locked On crossover, our first as Locked On UCLA crossing over with Locked On Utes and JT Wistersill. That's coming up for a special Thursday episode. We'll release a special shortened edition of Throwback Thursday for Locked On UCLA, which we always like to do. And we'll make our predictions and say keys to the game for UCLA to try and get a win against the top-ranked Utes team. But as I said, just a moment ago, this is what the Pac-12 schedules look like. These are each team's toughest games for the 4 remaining unbeatens in the Pac-12. USC will start with them. They're the highest ranked. They've played the most Pac-12 games because they played Stanford in week 2 as usual. SC plays Washington State at home. That's a sneaky tough matchup. That's one that SC could drop, but still, so far they found ways to win. They play at Utah. They play at UCLA. And then for the most part, that's the rest of their schedule. There's nothing truly remarkable for the rest of those games. Then they play at Arizona, coming off a bye, which could be a very much of a trap game, like this Wazoo home game is for SC. But for the most part, if they hold serve, I think SC might have the easiest schedule moving forward. That's just the way it is if UCLA is trying to keep up in the Pac-12 standings. Oregon, well, they've got a bit of a tough slate. They got Oregon State on the road in their rivalry matchup in the Civil War. They've got Utah at home, Washington at home, and UCLA at home. Keywords, all those. 3 important games, all played at Autzen. Oregon tends to win those, and they've already seen the number 1 team in the country and got smacked. They know what it's like to face the best, and now they're trying to build to be the best. The Ducks will be a tough matchup, and they get all those games at home, which is a lot better than playing a neutral site, quote-unquote, road game against Georgia early. They know what it's like to make it tough to play at home. And Oregon, besides that Oregon State game, probably no true tough road games for the rest of the season, other than Oregon State. And it depends how competitive they are at the end of the year. Utah, well, they play at Washington State, at Oregon, at UCLA, and they play hosts to SC. So, of course, their big game playing home to SC will be very important. UCLA looking for it, but UCLA, they can knock off Utah. They can almost pick them off and see how the Utes have a very tough schedule remaining. A lot of those games on the road. Oregon gets those 3 at home. Utah gets a lot of important games on the road. And UCLA, well, they've gotten a lot of important games. They have so many games at home. They have 8 this year. It's been like 80 years since they've had 8 games at home. And we detailed that a long time ago in a Throwback Thursday episode. But the key thing is, you have SC and Oregon. They miss each other, obviously, this year. SC playing Oregon State. Those teams kind of, as we flip-flop with the Pac-12 schedules, SC and Oregon miss each other. Would have been a fun game, but that just adds to the weight and the importance of UCLA playing. They've got 3 more important games and still some key trip-up games. You could argue UCLA's game at Arizona State will be a bit tougher with a team that's playing for an interim head coach, or you could argue that's a blowout. You could argue that the home game against Arizona will be extremely tough. But the Utah game brings so much weight and implications. It's a way for the fan base to respond to a team, UCLA, that deserves some love and respect by its own fans in the Rose Bowl in Pasadena, Saturday, October 8th at 12:30, in the biggest home game, the biggest game the Bruins have played in nearly a decade. Nearly a decade. It's as simple as that. They need support. They need the love. And we're not even going into X's and O's, but just sheerly from a support standpoint. They need our support. And for UCLA, on their own front, flipping it back, they need to show up and realize that this is an important game. It's a veteran group, teams that have played big college football, Power 5 football. They know what it's like. Dorian Thompson-Robinson's career has been building for this moment as a longtime UCLA quarterback. Saw the note where his career started 0-5 back in 18, and now here he is in 2022 with Chip Kelly, and they're starting 5-0. What a storybook flip, right? Kind of taking the program slightly for what was at the then time ruins and bringing them back to the Bruins that end with WINS, with wins. But the biggest thing is, can the Bruins get the win this week? Well, those are questions we'll answer all throughout the week. But just know that this is the most important game UCLA has played in 8 years. I pointed out the schedules, the four unbeatens. UCLA arguably has a very tough slate. Even though Utah and SC come to the Rose Bowl, you still got to go to Oregon. And, Rose Bowl hasn't been rocking just yet. It needs to be. As much as it was a lot louder Friday against Washington, it needs to be better. The Bruins need to get better, build and build for the all-important matchup for Utah this week and then ones going forward. The biggest game in 8 years. Can the Bruins answer the test? We'll try and answer those questions throughout the week before they answer themselves come October. I don't know where my brain's at. October 8th in the afternoon in Pasadena, where we'll be all excited for a mid-afternoon tilt. This has been Locked On to UCLA. Go make sure that Locked On Pac-12 is your second listen of the day with host Spencer McLaughlin. He takes you throughout the whole conference and gives good notes in a very interesting week of conference matchups. Washington State at SC, other big ones, but it's UCLA again, highlighting the docket for Pac-12 play for the second straight week in a row of the biggest game in the conference, and one of the argue probably the biggest game of the West Coast of the week. It's as simple as that. Go make him as your second listen. Bruin fans, get your hands in the air. 8 clap time. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. UCLA fights. Once again, you can go follow the Twitter. You can go follow at Locked On Bruins. Go like, comment, subscribe on YouTube. Tell me what your thoughts. If there's a game I missed as far as the biggest, but I'm pretty sure this is the biggest game it's been in 8 years since they played Oregon in mid-October of 2014. Comment your favorite UCLA moment, their biggest game in their history, whatever it is. Thanks for the subscribes. Keep liking, keep commenting. Thanks for all the love and the support. We'll keep going with Locked On UCLA. In the meantime, this has been Locked On UCLA. Go Bruins.